Welcome to Crush Your Money Goals, where we dive deep into all things money as your 2 millionaire mentors. I'm Bernadette Joy.
And I'm Stefanie Gonzales. This season, we're shifting gears and focusing on something that affects us all, quitting with confidence.
From financial habits to career transitions, we're here to guide you through the journey of taking charge of your finances and pursuing your dreams fearlessly.
Tune in every week as we share tips, stories, and expert insights to help you crush your money goals and embrace change with open arms. Welcome to Season 7, Quit with Conviction.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to our final episode for this season's Crush Your Money Goals podcast. Bernadette, how are you doing? Your afternoon. It's my evening. So how are you doing?
I am tired, but excited to have this conversation because we have a lot of things that we want to share with you as an audience and to leave the season on a great note. So I'm looking forward to the dialogue.
Yeah, me too. Let's go ahead and get into it because we want to be respectful of everybody's time.
So for those of you who have listened to this podcast season, we've had some amazing guests. And to be honest, Steph and I don't think we realized how much we had to learn from all of the different guests that we had. And we had quite a variety. And so my first thing that we wanted to cover today was asking you, Steph, first, who was your favorite guest? What is a recap that you want to share of what your lessons learned are from this season? And what do you think, if people want to go back and listen to those episodes, what should they be looking out for?
Yeah. Okay. I do think there are really 2 episodes that stuck out to me, to be fair. The one about divorce with Erin from Hello Divorce absolutely stuck out in terms of just like learning more about the space of divorce and, the resources that are really available to people, either thinking about navigating through or helping someone that's a close friend that might be contemplating divorce. I was just like, I still go back and look at the clip of you and I like jaw dropped in that conversation. So that's for sure one.
Literal jaw drop.
Yes, literal jaw drop. And I think the other one is our conversation with George Kamel. And I'll be honest, like I had a lot of anxiety going into that conversation because I was like, am I going to go off the rail talking about like this personal finance kind of perspective versus someone else's? But when you and I chatted about, how do we want to approach this discussion? Is this the right guest to bring on to the podcast? I was so glad that we did because he was just a really delightful person. And I get excited when I see his content come across my feed and I'm like, oh, George, he's really true to his personality to me now that I know more about him and what he's doing.
I love that. Ditto on both, because I actually sent that podcast episode of the divorce to several people who needed it in real time. So I'm really grateful that we recorded that, because that's something that if anyone is ever having to deal with a situation of even contemplating divorce or thinking about separation or just protecting your assets as a married woman, that is an excellent episode to listen to. So look out for that one if you haven't already listened to it. And then agreed on George, where we both had anxiety about that because he's not the type of person that we've normally interviewed, or even if you look at across the other guests, that it seemed like he was a little bit of like an oddball in that, but it reminded me, wow, I seriously have some biases that I need to work on personally. And I don't want people to judge me based off of what they've heard or seen and not actually having met me before. And since you and I have this platform that is such a privilege to allow us the opportunity and the access to have people and have the real conversations, it was a reminder to me that actually what we need to do is not rely on media, especially social media, to let us think that we know people. And actually, if I met a lot of these people who I think I disagree with, it might turn out that we have more in common than we expected. So I love that on both. But I will say that just the other episode that stuck out to me personally was our conversation with Gigi. And I'll say that because it didn't hit me the way that I thought it would be, because I thought we were going to talk a lot more about her journey to being an author, and because I'm obviously going through that myself. And so I was kind of listening for that. But what struck me about that conversation that has actually moved me to make some choices more recently is her whole discussion about sabbatical.
Yeah.
And, thinking that she was going on sabbatical and then not coming back from the sabbatical. And I thought that was such a great way to, I thought that was a great segue into quitting with conviction.
Yeah.
Like, hey, before you fully quit, why don't you take a break, try something else, and then see if that's something you want to do, and then you can quit. Which is so much of the rhetoric for women. And I would say for specifically women in corporate, it's just like, well, you just got to quit. And either you have to quit with a perfect plan in place, or you have to quit with no guardrails and just like hope for the best. And she was that happy medium of, I think this is something I want to do. I want to try hard to do it. She still left on good terms with her former employer, but she took a break and then did it and then decided to quit later. And so I thought that was a really good lesson for all of us to say, hey, you can take a sabbatical from a lot of things metaphorically and actually, and then you can make a choice because you also have more information to be able to make an informed choice about your quitting decision versus, oh, this is what I think it's going to be like on the other side. That's really cool.
Her recollection of leaving in good standing. I remember whenever you and I talked a little bit about, you're like, if I knew what I knew now, I might have like quit differently. Like if I was more mature about certain things now, like I would have quit differently. And she very much had me thinking about how I do feel like I didn't quit on the best of terms in certain ways. And I still have a lot of things unsaid. Let me put it that way. And I wish it wasn't like that, to be honest. But that's my story. And and I'm having to live with it. But I think it really taught me a lesson around like where I do and don't want to be, how I do and don't want to be treated, and where I have to stand up for myself at the end of the day. And so, I'm grateful to the experience, but at the same time, I look back and I'm like, oh, if I would have been a little bit more mature about that, it would have been different. But shout out to her for that because it was a really cool
also,
testament.
I think it's also a lesson to us in theme with this season of you don't have to wait until you're burned out and you don't have to wait until you're at your wit's end to quit. I think that was an overarching theme that I wasn't expecting to be reminded of is that whenever I have quit personally, it's because I was like, I'm so over it. I'm done. Versus like, hey girl, take a break. I'm always quitting at the point at which I'm ready to burn this whole place down. Whereas you can, not even, if it's not even a full sabbatical of just like, hey, go take a mental health day. Hey, go take a vacation. Go take a staycation. You don't have to go across the world to get a break and have to be able to put down your phone. It is totally acceptable for you to stay home and not look at your phone, your work phone, or like check your work emails too.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a really great reminder of like, hey, it doesn't have to be this all or nothing mentality. And I think, especially for the women who I believe listen to our podcast who, what they would quit, there is that golden handcuffs. And so it feels in a lot of ways, quote unquote, hard to quit, even at the point of burnout.
Yeah.
And so that's a reminder for both of us and for you as the audience to say, hey, if I'm going to quit and quit with conviction, it actually takes energy to quit in a positive way.
Absolutely. It takes energy, takes healing, takes a lot of things, right? Yeah, I agree. So for you, the interesting thing about this season was we pre-recorded everything. Shout out to us for doing something the way that we always told ourselves we would do it.
We actually did it this time.
But there were a lot of things that happened along the way, like throughout that time that were happening in real time that we kept like texting each other and being like, we should do an episode on this. So what are the things that are on your mind that maybe the audience didn't get to get some of our thought leadership and perspective on since we did the podcast the way that we did this season?
Yes. There were two themes that you and I had particularly talked about over text saying, wow, this would be a really good podcast episode. But wait, we already recorded the whole season. So here's it in a nutshell, which was the one thing that has been really top of mind for me is around politics But more specifically, and not to get into the depth of the politics itself, but my own ability to articulate and where my stance is on politics, to decide how involved I want to be in it. And then to really say to myself, well, how much am I willing to die on the sword for the things that are coming out right now? And so by the time this episode airs, we will still not have yet gone into election day. And so as a reminder to everyone, if you're listening, please register, go out to vote. Might be too late to register at that point, but if you somehow forget or still can, definitely register to vote.
Even if you're abroad, you can still do it.
Exactly. So I live in North Carolina. I particularly live in Charlotte, North Carolina. It is one of the battleground states as part of this election. We are getting a ton of political ads. Both candidates have visited the state multiple times. And it's such an interesting thing for me in my journey, because before I was always interested in politics, but I didn't actually think that my vote mattered. Truthfully, if I'm being honest, I think that my vote mattered because when I lived in New York, it always ends up blue, no matter what way. Yeah. Right. So
that's
it's kind of
like in Texas, honestly.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Right. So it's kind of like, yeah, I'm voting for the sake to say that I voted. And of course I should vote because I should vote. But for me in this year, in 2024, given the candidates and given the political environment, my vote actually kind of matters. Not kind of, it does matter. Like in actual terms, because Charlotte, the demographics for my city has changed so dramatically since 2020 due to the pandemic. It is one of the fastest growing cities in the US. And so people don't actually know how North Carolina is going to swing this year because of the influx of people that we've had, a lot of them coming from blue states, when North Carolina as a state has voted for a Republican presidential candidate almost all the elections except for two. Last one being Obama. And he didn't even win both times. He only won the first time here for his first term. Yeah. So it flipped. And so for me, I find myself in this position where not only does my individual vote matter, but I've actually been offered opportunities to help influence this campaign by being part of the digital creators campaign for the Harris campaign.
Sure.
So I'm getting invited to go to these rallies and to cover them. And they're asking me if I want to meet other down ballot candidates, which I'm very passionate about because in North Carolina, particularly two of the biggest roles, one of them being governor, which, obviously has a lot of control over the state. And then the attorney general who would dictate how elections are run in the future. Both of them have candidates who are running who I just completely do not agree with whatsoever. Right. And not just politics. I'm just talking about as like basic, like human dignity and principles. So that being said, was that I had to make a choice this past couple of weeks of how vocal am I going to be publicly, like on my platforms, in my email newsletter, in my social media, in my YouTube, about where I stand on certain things. And also how strong am I going to go? Am I going to be like, these are a bunch of assholes?
Register to vote.
Like, do I go just register to vote? Like, do I go Taylor Swift? Like, register to vote and I'm voting for these people. And this is why hey, this is also why you need to be doing your research on these other people, right? And I said to myself, and this is totally relevant for this conversation for a Money Goals podcast. One thing that happened was I already knew it was going to happen. Random people on the internet would leave me comments and saying, well, now you've gone political, so I'm unfollowing you. And I basically said, great, because if you don't understand the connection between me researching economic policy, and what I do as a money coach, like this is not, you're not my target audience anyway, but also, if you're also just going to unfollow me because you are in disagreement, that's also like, that's fine. You're allowed to do that. Right. Mm-hmm. But of course that, no one ever just unfollows. They have to like say it and announce it and say, well, I don't like you anymore. But then I had to reflect.
The challenge is it's a you as a person thing versus like just something else.
This podcast was particularly dedicated towards empowering women to claim their freedom. And so I'm like, kudos to you. Claim your freedom. You can totally unfollow me. That's great. But also, as a business owner, the only criticism I've ever gotten from anyone are people who've never paid me. So, and what a lot of people don't know about my business is that because I am in a very swingy North Carolina state, my clients run the spectrum of political beliefs. I have very conservative people who we know, we know that we don't have the same political views, but yet we are still able to work together and treat each other kindly and have meaningful dialogue. And I also have clients on my roster who are way more liberal than I am, who I'm like, ooh, good for you for saying that, because I don't have the balls to say that yet. Right. So I have that whole spectrum. And so what that has taught me in the last couple of weeks, in being involved in this political campaign, and it happened today, was that if I am not in a place where I can feel comfortable in expressing these things and in the way that I want to say them, instead of having to like, oh, let me scrub this clean so that people feel that it is palatable, then I'm not free.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then financially, like, what's the point of having all this money if I can't even still say what I want to say? Because we know there's plenty of billionaires that say whatever they want.
Yeah.
So and then the other thing I'll say on that, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, because this kind of leads into the trad wives conversation, is it made me understand that, and in behind the scenes and behind closed doors, there are so many women that have come up to me and say, I totally agree with you. And I actually, wish I could say those things, but my father is of this political affiliation, or my brother is, or my husband is. And so I can't say that. And that made me very grateful for the fact that I don't feel economically or psychologically or emotionally tied to the men in my life to have to dictate my beliefs or to feel comfortable in saying that. And I say this on this podcast to say, for those of you ladies who, like me and Steph, have reached a certain level of freedom, whether it is that you make a certain level of income, or that you have a certain net worth, or that you feel security in your financial status right now, think about all those women who don't have that. And so I said to myself, well, I don't want to waste this freedom. I don't want to waste this privilege that, other women can't say those things, but there's no reason other than my own fear of people judging me. So I might as well be who I am.
Attention ladies, want to be a debt-free millionaire? I'm your co-host Stefanie, and I'm here to help you activate your hard-earned income and achieve financial independence. For being a Crush Your Money Goals listener, I invite you to book your free personal one-on-one consultation with me today and get started on your wealth building journey. Visit www.womenswealtheffect.com/free. That's www.womenswealtheffect.com/free, and take control of your financial future. Don't wait.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. I think in this space of this particular election, like, I think what Kamala is bringing out in me is a recognition of how a mixed bag my opinions are on a lot of different things. And of course, women's rights to have a choice about their bodies and all the things that we as women know are our rights to have. 100% agree. When it comes to like economic policy and certain things, there's a very strong like Republican element to some of the things that I think about, because we are investors and we are building wealth and we think about those things, right? And so it's been really cool to watch this and see almost, in my opinion, and I think on that Trevor Noah podcast, they talked about this, how interestingly Republican Kamala is, right?
That's
even
correct.
Though she's on the Democratic ticket. And so I'm just learning about how this is all working and like playing out in different people's minds. And it's been really interesting to have just conversations with people, I think. And so, yeah, I love that you are taking this opportunity to put your foot forward on what you think and what you believe. Because that's what it's about at the end of the day. And I can still be here, right, in another country and care about what goes on in the US. And typically what I get is, well, you left here, so why do you care? I still care, right? Just because I'm not in the US doesn't mean that I don't care. And it's interesting. I actually get that comment from family more than not. Like distant family who feel like they can tell me something and I haven't seen them in like 20 years.
Yeah.
But
that's like a very similar, that's a very similar, thought to like what, why I think so many people took offense to the childless cat lady comment of like, you don't have to have children to care about children.
Exactly. Nieces and nephews.
Yeah. Even if I didn't have nieces and nephews, even if I didn't have any children in my life, like, isn't that just a common human belief, right? Of like, I think you're right? Is just that why I specifically said yes to it, because I had reservations about it. I didn't want to, and I told them flat out, I'm not going to be like a rah Kamala, like she does everything right. Because if people read my newsletter, they'll see that, I had some, I rated her at a 6 out of 10 on her economic policy, not a 10 out of 10 just because. And, but, for example, she's proposing a $6,000 childcare credit. And like, for me to be like, well, I don't have kids, that's not fair. Like, to me, it's such a, immature mindset, which is like a lot of the mindset that people had about like student loans. Well, why should people get their student loans forgiven? I don't have student loans. What? I don't have kids. Like, you don't see me being like, I should keep my money because I don't have kids. Like, that doesn't make sense. But I do think what has been really so politics aside, if you're listening to this podcast, right? I think there is a certain level of respect and maturity that goes into watching someone like a Kamala being able to do what she does in this type of environment. I don't know that there's probably less than a handful of women on earth that would put themselves under this level of scrutiny and, at the simplest form of it, name calling and ridicule and bullshit. And so what has really drawn me to even just watching the campaign, whereas I think we're all past the spectacle of it. We're all past the, what's he going to say next kind of thing. It's to say, I was really, really impressed with her when I saw her in person. Yeah. And I think that really is what actually changed my view on it, to say, wow, this woman is so poised, and even just like fundamentals of technical stuff. I'm like, she is speaking without a teleprompter right now. She knows her stuff. She is interacting with the audience. She knows how to pace and how to make it sound intellectual, but also simple for people to understand. After that first rally that I went to AJ and I said, I need to level up my game. Yeah.
I remember you texting me something like that too.
Yeah. I was just like, I thought I was a good speaker. Oh no, no. This woman is amazing. And then when you take it to the debate, not only is she a great orator singularly, there's another level of badassery to be a good debate.
And like knowing psychologically what to do. It just like, of course she's got an entire team behind her and I get that. So many things can be said about approach and response and like leaving some things just unsaid so that someone else can fall into the hole that
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I will say this, and then we'll move
Taught
on
me to
from
shut
this.
my mouth a couple times too, by the way. I was like, oh, I should have left that conversation the way it should have gone. Yeah.
Oh, I know. I'll say this as where I peaked in my oratory career was in eighth grade. I was on the debate team in my middle school debate team, and I had to debate against affirmative action. That was the stance that I had to take, because like you get assigned
Of course.
a role, right?
Yeah.
And 13-year-old Bernadette is like, but I think affirmative action is good. But now I have to, I have to debate the opposite.
You got this twitch while you're talking.
Yeah. And I was on a team debate team. So we have 4 people on each side. And so the last person is the rebuttal person, but then the rebuttal person doesn't really get any practice. They have to listen very carefully to what the other team said, and then quickly be like, okay, I use this card, but not that card, or whatever. Right. And then change it. Right. So I got assigned, of course, the rebuttal seat of it. And in 8th grade, I won like I won the debate award because I was able to, think in real time, which is a different kind of skill than reading a canned speech. Now, like you said, granted, she has her team and all of that stuff. To be able to do that on a national stage like that, to me, has been reigniting my own excitement about what I get to do for my job, and also want to be better at it, want to be not just good, but be great at it. And so, like I said, for anyone, even if you're not into politics, even if you just study her as an orator,
you'll learn a lot. So,
what we wanted to talk about next is this, and that's actually a segue, is given all the things that we've learned in the last couple of weeks, what is changing for our businesses? And so, Steph, I would love for you to share with the audience what we talked about earlier of what's transpired for you the last couple of weeks, and what's that meant for how you want to move with your business going forward.
Yeah. And, it could be like the last couple of weeks, but in reality, I think the last couple of years, there have been like 2, 3, 6-week stints that have and the summer break is what really does it too. That it constantly put the elephant in the room in front of me, which is, I know I want to build a life and a business or a body of work that will allow me to have ultimate flexibility. Because I have 2 young children. We're in this beautiful country. We've made progress to be able to do that thing, the flexibility thing. And I've just learned that I was constantly trying to build my business in this specifically service-based model that required me to be either pushing for the next round of cohort or pushing for the next thing. And it's not even about trading the time for money. It's but needing to be on almost consistently. Otherwise you just lose all this momentum. And the social media element adds into that, right? Which it's not all bad, but I am just not in the place in my life where, number one, I want to be on like that all the time. I don't want to have to share all the details of my life like that all the time. And it's not that I'm super private, but even sharing this part, I'm like, do I need to make an announcement about this? Or can I just speak to my paid clients about what's going on? Right. The people that do really care. But I think at the end of the day, I am still very much available to help someone who wants an actual one-on-one coaching session. I may go ahead and launch a cohort once a year if I feel like I want to do that, but it would be within this roster, this network of people that I go directly to. But I'm not passionate about being this Instagram something brand personality in this space. But the thing that has been really quote unquote calling me has been figuring out what the 2.0 journey in my investing, wealth building life cycle is. And I think about this also in the terms of what do I want to leave in terms of learning and legacy for the boys? And real estate is a big part of that. especially as we continue to live internationally, right? And so, we had a rental property that we were landlords by default, but now I want to go into not real estate investing for the purpose of being a renter and like having investment properties, but I want to work alongside other women or men even, right? To create lucrative real estate opportunities that are going to give gain and return and learn what that's like. And I think the thing that's been really cool for us here is, with the work that Joe does, we get access to people and conversations in ways that we wouldn't have otherwise, or I wouldn't have even given time to. And so in these conversations with these people, this is kind of coming about. So I will focus my time, throughout the rest of this year with the Women's Wealth Investing Effect cohort that currently exists. And I will continue to help those women and a couple of my VIP clients that I have in terms of one-on-ones. But I am going to be taking more time to focus on that real estate part of our journey. And I'll leave it with this last thing is like a big thank you, because I didn't think that this podcast season would go the way that it did in terms of like my involvement towards the end, because I had a big family emergency that took me out of Portugal back in the US, needing to take care of 5 kids under the age of 7 and like literally just dropping everything. Oh, by the way, we got COVID before we left. And then my grandma passed away at the end of all of that. And so the last 2 months have been like flipped upside down, but it was a big lesson of like, I was really out of social media for a long time. I didn't even have my phone on me. And so it gave me time to think, and it gave me time to just have some deeper conversations with Joe about what does this look like? What does this mean? What do you want to do that's going to excite you? And I love to learn. I love being challenged, right? So I'm going to sit on my butt and do nothing. So yeah, that's going to be the shift.
Ta-da! If you like this content, please go ahead and check out my latest project. It's the Crush Your Money Goals book, and it will be available for purchase December. But now you can get it for pre-order, and you can learn the 25 money habits that will help you save, invest, and plan for financial freedom the same way that I did and was able to retire by 40. Check it out at crushyourmoneygoals.com. I'm excited for you for that, because it's brave. It's not starting over per se, but a lot of people would have this, oh, but you've already built such a following and you're so good at it. And, there'd be a lot of sunk cost fallacy into it, right? To say, oh, well, I built this thing, and so I should just keep it running. And so I love that for you. But also, as someone who's been coaching for 5 years now, you know what? Great job on the idea of, trying to figure out something that is less service based. And it's not that I don't love my clients, but to your point, my vacation schedule, my dance schedule, like all of the things that I actually really want to do moving forward, it does revolve around my client schedule. And even though I've said multiple times that I work 20 hours a week and I try to do my best to stick to that or whatever, it's still very much a service-based business. So I myself am going to go through that transition as well in the next couple of months, of where I can still serve people, but it doesn't have to be me being on all the time. I think that's what really resonated with what you said to me, is just that I think I will always be in some kind of like client service capacity, because I really do enjoy the clients. Yeah, the clients. But specifically, and this sounds terrible to say, but this is the truth, is I've said this to my clients and they know it. People are like, wow, like you really care about people. And yes, I do. I'm not going to say I don't care about people, but the main driver of why I enjoy doing coaching is because I like learning new things and then teaching them to other people. And then when they implement it, I feel successful that I was able to get someone else to do it. Meaning like, oh, wow, I was able to break it down and make it. So that means I really understand it. Well, that means like I, quote unquote, mastered this concept or mastered this skill. And I've always been that way. like even as a kid.
Yeah.
So, but to your point, social media will just suck you into this world of now you got to show everything that you're doing all the time.
Be super relatable. And
I have to be super relatable, and you shouldn't brag on yourself too much because then people will cancel you or, all this stuff. And what's been interesting for me is that I'm sure maybe you felt this too in the past, but like a lot of the creators that we know are all basically complaining that the algorithm has like made their content irrelevant and they can't get people to follow them and all this other stuff. And some big creators I know too. And for me, I have been less thoughtful about my content. And then lately I've just been posting videos of me and AJ dancing and nobody cares about my money content. Mm-hmm. But people come up to me and they're like, oh, I really like you and AJ dancing. Y'all are so cute. And I'm like, that's so not what I was going for. But
I really loved your carousel about how you guys budgeted to like pay down your debt. And you're like, no,
that's never happened. And that will never happen. So I love that that's really brave. I'm really proud of you for making that choice. And also, thanking you for co-leading this journey over the last, how long has it been now since we first, like 2 years?
Almost 2 years. Yeah. Almost
I don't know. How long you've known you for much longer than 2 years.
Oh, we've known each other longer than that, but yeah.
But even then, I feel like we must have known each other in another past life because I feel like from the moment I met you, I'm like, oh my God, she just gets me. So,
but think about this, right? Like in my mind, this next step and what I want to do is like, it's expanding on the thing that I think you and I love about this work is that we get an opportunity to meet women who are passionate about taking like real responsibility and like giving intention to their finances, becoming wealthy and doing something with that. And I'm going to call you and be like, hey, here's this opportunity in this area. Are you interested in investing? I'm going to call Janine. I'm going to call like all these people that I know are thinking about like, what should I be doing here? Or, like saying, who do you know that's interested in this type of stuff? Whatever. And that's the cool thing to me is like being able to like just create something with other people. I don't want to do this alone. Right. And so, like I've got some conversations teed up with some really interesting people and I'm just excited to learn like why they even got into it and why they're wanting to do it. We'll see how it goes.
I love it. And I'll always be ready for that call because I'm always interested in hearing what you're doing. And I think that leads us to our next one of our last talking points on this episode, which is Steph and I decided that this is our last episode, not only for the season, but for the podcast. And that was a really, tough choice to make. And for me, I'll let Steph speak for herself, is that I'm super grateful. I've been doing this podcast since 2018 because I still, get people who say, I'll listen to your podcast. And I'm always surprised. I'm always shocked when people say, oh, I listen to your podcast. I'm like, really? Because sometimes the numbers doesn't show that. And sometimes, but then you have to remember, like, and that's again where social media kind of screwed us up. It's just like, oh, we don't have 1 million downloads per episode, so nobody must be listening. That's like, I had a real, wake up call a couple days ago, and I was like, wow, 50 people is a lot. 100 people is a lot. 600 people is definitely a lot, right?
Yeah.
So for each of you who have listened to this podcast season since, 2018 or have come in and out with it or have just followed my journey, I don't do enough to say gratitude and thank you and really help you understand how much you listening to this content has changed my life. Because I started all of this not knowing what I was doing and just wanting to share. Like I said earlier, I'm just a nerd who likes to share information and insight and hope that someone gets benefit out of it. So if you've gotten benefit out of this podcast, I'm so, so grateful that you've listened this far.
No, I think that's amazing. And, whenever you and I chatted, what was it, the beginning of the year, last year, about like, hey, you should come and co-host this with me. Number one, I was like, oh my God, Bernadette asked me to do this with her. Like, oh, so cool. so exciting because it was daunting to think I wanted to even try this by myself, first of all, and then to be able to do it with someone that I like genuinely want to have conversations with. Like we're going to have a lot of offline conversations. They're just not going to be recorded anymore. So sorry. But that was it was such a great opportunity and a blessing because there's so many things that have happened in our lives over the last year and a half that we've been able to just like spend maybe 2 or 3 hours just chatting on the phone. We tried to record a podcast episode maybe for the 30 minutes of it, like our original scheduled time, but we just kept talking. And to have someone take time out of their very busy schedule to do that with me has just been like, it's been really, really awesome. And so I just want to say thank you for bringing me along and to be able to be here with you while you take this sunset opportunity with your baby. I'm happy to be here doing that with you because
thank you.
Yeah, you're great. And you've got really amazing things still going on. I mean, look behind you. It's awesome.
Well, yeah. Speaking of, so
yes,
so that leads into where we'll sign off in a little bit. And so just wanted to share with all of you, if you have not already picked that up by now, I'm really looking forward to launching my book, which comes out December 10th. And I will be spending, one of the reasons that I decided to take a break from the podcast as well is to focus on this other creation that I made that I do think I feel very proud now to say. I wasn't sure about it before, but now I'm more confident to say I think this book will stand the test of time in terms of being very evergreen and be the type of book that you can have on your bookshelf and take and dust it off every couple of years and still find something in it that will help you. So I'm very excited that if you liked this podcast, it's basically me in book form. And I don't think I told you this, Stefanie, because I just found it out, but I just got the word, I think on Friday, that I have been greenlit to do the audiobook version of it.
So, so cool.
Yeah. So if you want to listen to my voice still, it's of the book that's coming out. So I'm really looking forward to that as a next chapter as well. What are you looking forward to?
I'm so excited.
Is there anything that you want people to root you on for, even if it's something personal?
For anybody that I'm, going to reach out to and just ask for time, right? Because there's just like some really awesome, brilliant people out there that I think are doing work in the space that I'm interested in, specifically in real estate. But I'm just really looking forward to keeping like a good, meaty roster of people that I want to continue to engage in conversation with, right? Like Wally, right? Like we're going to have a chat and a conversation. Janine, and, I'm just eager to hear what's going on for them. I'm eager to hear like how I can support people like yourself with your book and everything that's coming out. I actually have the advanced copy here, which like for all intents and purposes, yours is the first book that came across the pond for like me to like really like get a look at, which for you to even take the time and like send it all the way is huge. And my boys got to help me open it, and they were so. They were like, "That's Bernadette on the cover, Mom." So, I mean, come on.
Cute.
Keep rooting me on as a mom with little boys that have a lot of energy and trying to, make sure that I really stay intentional with the time that I have with them and the work that I want to do.
Well, that's
if I do
not
anything
nothing.
Right. That's a big thing.
I will just chime in and to say, as someone who's gotten to know you over the last couple of years, that is a big thing. Like that to me, you getting to raise those two very adorable, cute little humans. You just told me your story earlier of like how Ollie just wants to follow Ben around, like the most adorable little people I've seen. I think that is harder than me doing a book to raise two humans and be present and to make sure that you are living a life that's aligned to what you want them to witness. And I think a lot of women who are listening to this podcast can relate to that. So for all of you ladies, including Steph, who keeps downplaying, I'm not doing anything or nothing that's a shebang, like that is a big deal. And it doesn't always have to be something that's like, a big project or whatever it is. We are allowed to root each other on for just making it through a Tuesday. Because I'll be honest, today, like we're recording today on a Tuesday. I was like, I didn't think I was going to make it today. So, the fact that, and that's just me with no kids and no pets and no plants because I killed them all. Right. So I'm very proud of you for saying that. And I really love that you model that, because I always point to you, Steph, as when people say, oh, financial freedom is not possible if you have kids or if you whatever. And I'm like, nope, not true. Go listen to my co-host. She's done it. She's been there, and she's navigating through it. So kudos to you for saying that. And yeah. And so I think that leads us to our last call to action.
Yeah. I would say for many of you listening, you probably didn't come onto this episode and think like, oh, this is going to be the last episode I'm going to be hearing, right? It was probably a shock. I would really encourage you, in the spirit of quitting with conviction, you as a listener, like if this shocked you, and if there's something that you've been like, I've been thinking about making this change, or I've been telling myself I'm going to commit to like quitting this specific thing I eat or thing I don't do, or this mindset that I have that I know I need to change, or whatever it is, I would really encourage you to think about like, what is the thing that you should be quitting? And what do you want to really, like, what conversation do you need to really have with yourself or with someone else to work through that? Because, like you said at the beginning of the episode, Bernadette, quitting isn't an all or nothing thing. But you got to give yourself the chance to like make some space or create this environment where you can think through, what does quitting that thing mean? You don't have to just keep going. Quitting can be quite liberating, quite frankly, and give you some time and space to do something that might be more right for you than you would give yourself credit.
Love that. So, as she said, for those of you who are listening, thank you so much for not quitting us up until this point and then not letting us quit on you, I guess, in some regard. But Steph and I still plan to be involved in different ways on how we want to show up for you. And so I hope that you'll cheer us both on. And I am super grateful, as I said before, for taking your time and energy and the space to listen to this platform. If you haven't already, please leave us a review. We would love to hear from you on things that you've learned from this podcast. And if you ever want to talk about quitting, I'm sure, we'll leave our information in the show notes on how you can reach us going forward. Yeah. So thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Steph.
Yes, thank you too. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Crush Your Money Goals podcast.
Please leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to this podcast. Your feedback helps us spread the wealth of knowledge to more women like you.
And if you'd like to work with me to help you answer the important question, if I'm on track to retire, be sure to snag my free financial independence planner at womenswealtheffect.com/planner.
And if you'd like to work with me to kickstart your financial freedom plan, you can grab the Cha-Ching Checklist, my free guide at crushyourmoneygoals.com/free guide.
See you next time.